Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tam Hadevamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Vamshasharbhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhya Sarvopaplavarahitaha Prajnanaghanaha Pratyagartho Brahmaivahamasmi Brahmaivahamasmi. Vedantartha Vibhasakaya Gurave Shantaya Sannyasine Nanavadi Nagendra Sanghapavaye Yogindra Vandyaya Cha Mohadvanta Divakaraya Bhagavat Padabhidham Bibhrate Tasmai Bhashakrite Namostu Satatam Purnaya Bodhatmane. Yasya Nishvasitam Veda Yo Vedebhyo Khilan Jagat Nirmame Tamaham Vande Vidyatirtha Maheshwaram. Vidyatirtha Maheshwaram. So the overall map of this book is drawn by these questions and answers to these questions. The first question being Kayam Jivan Mukti. Kayam matlab Kayam Jivan Mukti. What is it that can be called, defined as Jivan Mukti? So the questioner is very clear about his understanding as what mukti is. And the principal meaning of the word mukti is videha kaivalyam. We have seen that. How did it come? That vidvan nama rupad vimuktaha etc. Jana devatu kaivalyam. All these shrutis now are responsible to show us this particular meaning, that the kaivalyam means kevali bhavaha is possible when even the condition due to which the falsified duality is also not experienced or not seen. So look at this whole progress of the thought. Duality is experienced by all. Whether that person is educated, not educated, rich or poor, or even the one who is ignorant or the enlightened. Duality, because it is something that is a given fact. Now, whatever that given fact is, how real is the fact is another question. Okay. Just as we have the snake. Which snake are we talking about? The Rajju Sarpa, the snake on the rope. Okay. Now, whenever anybody has to talk about the snake, now though the snake is falsified later on, yet its experience was there is a snake. Okay, so how do we see the snake? As existing. So it is something with which existence is associated, then is recognized as a fact. Okay, something with which existence is associated is recognized as some fact, some reality. Okay, that's why we have to distinguish between the orders of reality too. Now, something which is asat, something with which the existence is not associated. For example, we have the horn of a rabbit. Okay, shashashranga. We know about a horn of a buffalo, a horn of a deer, a horn of a goat. You can have horn of a rhinoceros, but no, though there is we can compose a word horn of a rabbit. Rabbit also we know. Horn also we have an understanding about what the horn is, but when both these words come together, they fail to show, to illumine any existential object. We cannot come across any object which is a horn of a rabbit. You can have ears of a rabbit, hair of the rabbit, the fur of the rabbit, but we cannot have something like the horn of the rabbit. And therefore we say, with the shashashranga, satta, reality, is not associated. And hence now we do not even categorize it as false. In order to say something is false, it needs a prelude of accepting that it was somewhere accepted as real. It needs a prelude. So the snake which was seen on the rope was thought, was experienced, was known by the person as being real. There is a snake. This is a snake. I am sarpaha. Tatra sarposti is there. The serpent is there. Now that isness is indicating its association with existence. So now the snake is also seen with existence. But later on, it is falsified. It is falsified. What? So thus, when the eyes are able to function properly in adequate light, in the earlier case, when the experience was generated, I am sarpaha, this is a snake. The eyes, which are supposed to generate the knowledge of objects outside, were not able to function properly because inadequacy of light. But later on, when the lights were switched on, you switch the bulbs on in the room, then the eyes were able to establish the contact and with the object and were able to function properly, and the knowledge generated then was iyam rajuhu. This is a rope. So now this is a rope. This knowledge falsifies the earlier cognition. The earlier cognition was, this is a snake. This is a snake. This cognition is falsified by the later generated cognition. And the cognition which is generated later, why do you call it as knowledge? Because the equipment which is supposed to generate the knowledge now was able to function under the optimum conditions. All right. So also now, if you have understood that what is it that we call as false, what is it that we call as non-existent, something which is non-existent cannot be even called as false. As a rule, that what is non-existent, like the shashashringa, the horn of the rabbit, is how it is non-existent, and hence it cannot be even called as false. But you are calling the snake as false in this case is now because that earlier it was or even now because there was some association with existence. Okay. Now, what kind of association that we are later going to say it is pratibhasika satta. That is an apparent order of reality. Okay. It is what? So, just for your information, and we will go into it later on. But in Vedanta, why in Vedanta? By our experience, we are also able to say there are three orders of reality. Okay, there are three orders of reality. Sattatrayam. And the reality is always one. But for the convenience of understanding, now we are categorizing it in this as these orders. So the snake, again, snake, when we speak over here, Rajju Sarpa. Do not forget that. Rajju Sarpa, the snake on the rope. Okay. This snake is an apparent reality. How is it? It appears to be real. How long does it appear to be real? Till it is falsified by another knowledge of a transactional object. Okay. Then the second order of reality is the transactional reality. And that is what we all say, that the table is real, the lights are real, the curtains are real, the doors and walls are real. How can you say it is false? We are able to see, we are able to touch, we are able to know. And so what is exactly being said when you are saying these objects are real? The sun and the moon, the mountains and the rivers and the stars, and all this is real. The galaxies, etc., everything real, because there is some form of transaction between you and that. There is a transaction. Okay. Even knowing that object is a transaction of knowledge over here. Okay. Whether you know it directly through your senses, hey, you'll fall. And so you know it directly through the senses, or you know through inference. This is irrelevant. But there is knowing that is happening, and that knowing is now here a transaction between you and the object. So pay attention to it. This reality which you are saying that the world is real is why? Because there is a transaction with the world, and hence this is a transactional reality. Okay. Then there is an absolute reality. There is absolute reality. Now, this absolute reality means paramarthika satta, because of which even the transactional reality is possible. To understand this, I will give you an example. All right. So when you say the pot is real, now please tell me, a clay pot, an example, there is a clay pot, and you are able to lift the pot, you are able to purchase the pot, you are able to sell the pot, you are able to fill water into the pot, you are able to store something else into the pot, you are able to empty the water from the pot, so on and so forth. So now there is pot, and this pot is a name, a form, and it has got its own properties, that so many liters of water can be stored in it, so on and so forth. This is the volume, this is the weight, this is the height. Okay, so we have, so there are properties associated with that pot, and so it is also transactional entity. This pot is a transactional entity. Now, when there is this pot, a name, a form with properties, with certain what do they call, karma associated with it, function associated with it. Now the function could be storing water, storing grains, say, various people will have various other things associated with, but some function that they are able to conduct with the pot. So this pot is a functional entity, a transactional entity. But now our question is, this clay pot, the name, the form, its transactions, its properties, all functions, everything is dependent on the clay. Say, suppose we take the clay away, will there be any name left behind? Will you be able to find any form? Will there be any function? Will there be any properties? Will there be any transaction? So what do we find in case of this clay pot is that is the clay the pot? If clay is the pot, then even when the form of the pot is not there, you should be able to fill water in the clay. But are you able to fill water in the clay? No. In order to fill water, you need a pot. So the name, the form, and even when the name and form, the pot is destroyed, the clay is not destroyed. So this proves that clay is something more than just this name and the form, the pot. So what do we find here in this example is that the name, the form, functions and transactions, all is dependent, all this is dependent on the clay, is dependent on the clay, but clay is not dependent on the pot, on the name, on the form, its functions, its properties, nothing. Clay is totally independent. But the name, the form, the functions, the properties, everything is dependent on the clay. And therefore, in this case, we find that something, the clay, which is beyond the name, beyond the form, beyond its functions, which is providing, is the real substance which provides existence to the pot, which provides existence, reality to the pot. If the clay is not there, we cannot have any pot which can be called as real or false or apparent or anything. So it is the clay which now is, in this case, is the real existence, Atma, of the pot. Like that, we have these three orders of reality. The apparent reality, then the apparent reality technically will be called as pratibhasika satta. It will be called as pratibhasika satta, apparent order of reality. Then we have the transactional reality. Transactional reality is called as Vyavaharika Satta. Vyavahara. And just because some Vyavahara is possible, some transaction is possible, we say that this is what is real. But we forget that it is that the transaction is also possible because of something, because of existence which is way far beyond, untouched, unaffected even by the transactions. And therefore that which is beyond the name, beyond the form, beyond all properties and attributes, is what we call as real. Now look at that. All the theologians are fighting to prove God is real. And they want to prove God is real as this world. And what do you mean by God is as real as this world? Which means as it is a transactional reality, like this, like the objects of this world. You are able to experience the table, the tree, the stars, the moon, the sun, the mountains, rivers. Like that, there is God, and maybe you're not experiencing God now, you will experience God later on. And so they are saying that God is also a transactional entity and therefore carries exactly the same degree of reality as this transactional world. Vedanta says, God is more real than this world. You see the difference? If I was to say the pot is real, because yes, we are able to do functions with the pot. Without the pot, I won't be able to fill water. But the very fact that I am able to fill the water, use the pot, and do some transactions with the pot is because the existence to this pot is given, provided by the clay. Is provided by the clay. Like that, that which is way far beyond all the names and forms is what we call as and is the very self, is the very essence of all the names and forms, is the Atma, is Brahman, is God. And therefore, Vedanta is not at all one of the contenders with the rest of the theologies. The rest of the theologians will keep on fighting whose God is real. My God is real, or your God is real, and my God is greater, or your God is greater. We say that we are not, this is not at all. If your God is carrying the same degree of reality like this transactional world, then that God is only a transactional entity, and that which provides existence, even to this God, is more real, because the clay is more real than the pot. The pot as a name and a form will appear and disappear. The pot appears in the clay and the pot goes back into the clay. And therefore, the clay remains. The pot is something that comes and goes. That which comes and goes is like a dream, and that which never that never comes and goes, is not born or not killed, is not destroyed or not created, is the very substance, is something that is real. And that what is therefore absolutely real is the only what can be called as real. Then why are you calling the other two as also some degree of reality? Because we find existence associated with these two, not like Shashashrunga. where it is non-existence. Existence cannot be associated with it. And therefore, based on that, we have these three orders of reality. Pratibhasika satta, the apparent reality. Transactional reality is Vyavaharika satta. And that what is absolute reality is Paramarthika satta. If this much is understood, now a little further, this whole world, now what about this world, which is also a transactional reality, is dependent on that which is absolute reality. And what is that absolute reality is, because it is not any name or any form, not but is present in every name and form, and yet is beyond every name and form, untouched, uncontaminated by by the names and forms, which remains ever immaculate, is Paramatma, is Brahman, and that Brahman is what is the meaning of I. So, so now this is the meaning of mukti, is in knowing that this Atma is Brahman. So what is mukti? By knowledge, kaivalya, what is it? Jnanad evatu kaivalyam. Jnanad is Panchami. Jnanad, that padam is Panchami vibhakti. So that means it is that apadan is indicating karanam. It is indicating karanam. Jnanad evatu kaivalyam. Kaivalyam is liberation here. How is this kaivalyam attained? Through knowledge. Through knowledge. Now, this being the principal meaning in which the duality is falsified. And what is therefore kaivalyam? There where even this falsified duality is also not experienced. Only Atma. Kaivalyam is Kevalaha. Just Atma. Just that. So over here, in this Videha Kaivalyam, we do not have any duality, even falsified duality is not there. In the case of an ignorant, in our case, what do we see? We not only see the duality, we also call this duality as real. This duality as real. And what is that duality here presently? The experiencer and the experienced. So who is the experiencer? I am the experiencer. What are you experiencing? Whatever it may be. It could be joys and sorrows and whatever. All polarities. So here, that what is experienced, this duality of experiencer and the experienced, what happens to this is also falsified. But in Kaivalyam, which is the principal meaning of the word mukti, even the falsified duality is not available. And therefore it is Kaivalyam. Therefore it is Kaivalyam. So the questioner already knows that this is the meaning of word mukti. And now we are not even going to say that it is a purushartha, etc. All that is done. So this is mukti. But he is questioning, Kayam Jivan Mukti. What is this Jivan Mukti? Videha Mukti is understood as mukti. But you have a claim and you are saying that there is something like Jivan Mukti, then might as well uh, prove something like Jivan Mukti. Define what is Jivan Mukti first, and then we will verify. What do you mean by that Jivan Mukti? So the first question we have already seen. Then it was answered in yesterday's discourse. We have already seen Jivataha Purushasya Kartritva Bhoktritva Sukha Dukkhadi Lakshanaschitta Dharmaha Klesha Rupatvat Bandhaha Bhavati Bandho Bhavati Tasya Nivaranam Jivan Muktihi Atyantika Nivarana Sambhavepi Abhibhavasya Sambhavat. Now, Jivan Mukti, in fact, the morning class is exactly running parallel on this because it is the revision of the first chapter. So revision in the sense we are going into the details through with the help of that commentary, and it is exactly at this point. So you will feel that it is repetition of the morning class, but only for this portion. जीवतः पुरुषस्य कर्तृत्व भोक्तृत्व सुख दुःखादि लक्षणश्चित्त धर्मः क्लेश रूपत्वात् बंधो भवति. Now, basically, to say something is mukti, you will have to show first what is the bondage. Because the word mukti means freedom. Then freedom means what? Freedom from something. Only then the word freedom will become meaningful. I want freedom. I want freedom. Freedom means what? So you will have to say, I want freedom from something. Then it becomes freedom. So in order to understand Jivan Mukti, we will have to say what is bondage here. What is bondage? So Jivataha Purushasya Kartrit Chitta Dharmaha Klesha Rupatvat Bandho Bhavati. What is bondage? Some Chitta Dharma, some intrinsic qualities of the mind. Okay. Now pay attention by calling it dharma, which means an intrinsic quality. So by saying something is an intrinsic quality, which means that this quality, this nature, cannot be disassociated from the substance. Okay. That attribute cannot be disassociated from its substantive. Okay. It cannot be disassociated. So it will always remain. It will always remain over there. So, but this chitta dharma is what is the chitta dharma? Kartritva, bhoktritva. We have seen this in detail yesterday. Kartritva, which means doership. Bhoktritva, which means experiencership. Then sukha, dukkha, etc. What happens to all this? These are bandhas. Sir, why are you calling it a bondage? All this generally nobody calls. In fact, we are all interested in decorating this kartritvam and bhuktritvam, enhancing it, polishing it. We are all more interested in polishing, decorating this kartritvam and bhoktritvam. And you are saying that this kartritvam, bhoktritvam is a bondage? Yes, sir. Why is it a bondage? Klesha rupatva. Because it is of the nature of affliction. All this is of the nature of afflictions. How that is, we have seen. Klesha rupatvat bandho bhavati. Tasya nivaranam jivan muktihi. Now, now we have what can be called as bondage. So, freedom from that bondage is liberation. So, freedom from these chitta dharmas is called as Jivan Mukti. Why Jivan Mukti? Because Jivataha Purushasya. Because this is possible only in a living person. Jivataha Purushasya. Jivataha Purushasya, both of them are Shashtanta. So Jivataha Purushasya, they become the bandhas. And therefore, for him, now freedom from these chitta dharmas will be called as Jivan Mukti. But that freedom, sir, you are saying is Nivaranam. It's removal. It's removal. But don't you see that this is a self-contradictory statement? Because you have in one go, in the same breath, you are calling it as an intrinsic quality, and at the same time, you are asking its removal. How can that be possible? How is that possible? I can remove my red shirt and wear a yellow shirt, because that shirt, yellow and red, is both are not my is not my intrinsic nature. Is not my intrinsic nature. So some like the heat in the fire, that is the dharma of the fire, heat. Can you have fire without heat? Fire without heat will only be a picture on the wall. That is not fire. What is the dharma? Aushnyam is the dharma of Ushnata is the dharma. Heat is the dharma of fire. It cannot be disassociated. And therefore, a little refinement over here, and that is, pay attention, this is very important. Atyantika nivarana asambhavepi. What is asambhava? Asambhava means impossible. It is not possible to remove these chitta dharmas completely, totally. Yet, so there is a clause. Yet, what happens? Asambhavepi, yet abhibhavasya sambhavat. These chitta dharmas, which chitta dharmas we are talking about? Kartrutva, bhoktrutva, sukha, dukkhadi, and by that adi means etc. So then you can count everything: greed, lust, anger, so on and so forth. Whatever now that can be, that is experienced as klesha, as an affliction, bring it under that adi. Bring it under the adi. Atyantika nivarana asambhavepi. Don't say that, my wife, my neighbor is an affliction, because they are not chitta dharmas. They are not chitta dharmas. We are talking about the chitta dharmas. Remember, atyantika nivarana asambhavepi. Though absolute, complete eradication of these chitta dharmas is not possible, yet the subduement, the chitta dharmas can be overpowered, can be subdued. So it's not subservient, but it can be subdued. And this subduement of this chitta dharmas now therefore is called as nivritti, is called as nivaranam. So by the word nivaranam, what do we mean? Abhibhavaha. By the word nivaranam, what is meant? Abhibhavaha. Abhibhava. Abhibhava means subduement, to overpower. Okay. Abhibhavasya sambhavat. Now comes the next topic. Kim tatra pramana. Sir, very well. You have defined there is this is what is called as Jivan Mukti. But just as how you may define what is a cow, how that which is sasanadi matvam gotvam, and that which has got this gotvam is a cow, and then the but you require eyes as a pramanam to see that animal, and therefore Lakshana is also required, Pramana is also required. Lakshana is already provided by you. What is the Pramana? So the Pramanam, Kim Tatra Pramanam, and there we went in the first chapter itself. We had gone into all this in Shruti Smriti Vakyani Jivan Mukti Sadbhave Pramanani. Okay. Shruti Smriti Vakyani Jivan Mukti Sadbhave Pramanani. The Veda is a Pramanam. It is basically a Shabda Punja. It is Vakyas. And this Vakyam, the sentences, the statements, how are they? They serve as a Pramana. As they, just as your eyes over here serve you as an equipment to generate knowledge. Okay, so there is a yojana. It is organized. It becomes an instrument, a tool to generate knowledge. So the knowledge of colors and forms is generated by the chakshurindriya, by the visual faculty. And just as this visual faculty is an instrument, is a tool, is a very subtle mechanism through which the knowledge of colors and forms is generated. Like that, even the words are going to serve as a pramana. Now, take this example of the eyes. You cannot replace the eyes with ears. You cannot say that, my auditory faculty now also will generate the knowledge of colors and forms for me. Auditory faculty will generate the knowledge of sounds. Through your ears, you will never be able to know whether it is blue or black or green or yellow. Colors and knowledge of colors and forms cannot be generated by the auditory faculty. Auditory faculty will only generate the knowledge of sounds. Okay. Like that, the shabda. So as a pramanam, it is irreplaceable. Not only that it is irreplaceable, the knowledge which is generated by the eyes, etc., cannot be even falsified by other faculties. Cannot be falsified by other faculties. Let us say you are able to see this book in front of you. Okay, there is a book in Swamiji's hand. There is this book, Jivan Mukti Viveka. Don't ask why my book is looking brown in color, because there is a cover on it, a brown cover. Otherwise, Aradhana has been saying that there is a blue color book. Okay, now there is this book in my hand. Then somebody says, some Brahmadeva comes from Swargalok, some Brahmadeva comes, and he says, Swamiji, it is not a book in your hand, it is a rat. Now the knowledge it is a book is already generated by your eyes. Now even if some Brahmadeva comes and tells you it is a rat, it is not a book, you are going to say, sir, with due respect to you, your age, your position as Brahmadeva, namaskar, but it is still book. Why were you even able to refuse an authority like that? Because the Pramanam is more powerful than any authority. Because the Pramanam is far more powerful than any authority. Let it be even Brahmadeva, whosoever it may be. It can be anyone. But when the knowledge is generated and generated by the appropriate equipment under the optimum conditions, it cannot be falsified, it cannot be challenged. So Pramanam, Veda becomes the Pramana for you to know something. What is it that is known through this Pramana? Just as the colors and forms are known through your visual faculty, sound is known through the auditory faculty, and so inferential knowledge, and so the various Pramanas are there. Vedas, the Shabda Pramana, is able to show you something, and that is only two things: what is Dharma and what is Brahma. So it becomes a means to knowing Dharma and Brahma. Knowing Brahman, what happens? Moksha is accomplished. Mukti is accomplished. So now we know when it comes to the accomplishment of moksha or mukti, what is the pramanam? Veda is the pramanam. You are now talking about Jivan Mukti, and therefore you have to tell us what is the Pramanam over here. What is the Pramanam? So over there, what is it said? Shruti Smriti Vakyani Jivan Mukti Sadbhave Pramanani. The Pramana word is not evidence. Pramana is not some sort of authority. Pramakaranam pramanam. Pramayaha karanam. Karanam means an instrument, a tool. And tool of what? Of the prama, of the right knowledge. It is what? It is a tool of generating the right knowledge. Pramayaha karanam pramanam. This is it. Do not go by the colloquial use of the word pramanam. So that pramanam means some sort of certificate or anything. And either it could be endorsement, it could be some sort of certification, approval, that can be called as praman. In our local thing, okay? Colloquially, this is how the word is used over here. But technically, the word pramanam means pramayaha karanam. It is what? It is the karanam, it is the tool of pramana, of the prama. What is the pramanam for mukti, for moksha? Veda. You are talking about Jivan Mukti. Therefore, we need to know in the Veda, is this Jivan Mukti? Does this Jivan Mukti become evident through the Veda? Okay. Tatra, tatra, kim va tatra pramanam? This question, now you see, where is it able to take your understanding up to? Just that one sentence has got this capacity to lead your understanding right up to that final point. Swami Vishwatmananji, with whom I used to serve and he used to teach me, I studied under him for some time in Vrindavan. He used to say, शब्द की गम कहां तक है वहां तक जाओ. Travel as far as the word is able to take you. Travel as far as the word is able to take you. शब्द की गम जहां तक है वहां तक जाओ. Travel means not by train, no. Travel means understand. Let your understanding move. Let it get refined through the as much as the word is able to provide it. Okay. So Shruti Smriti Vakyani Tatra Jivan Mukti Sadbhave Pramanani. So yes, in the Upanishad, the Jivan Mukti is it is through the Vakyas of the Upanishad, Jivan Mukti becomes evident. Now, that what is shown by the Upanishad Vakyas now will be echoed by the Smritis, whether it is Bhagavad Gita or other Smritis, Puranas, etc., Itihasas, they will all come under this Smriti. So in the Smriti, the original source of knowledge, Veda, is thus reflected. And therefore, Shruti Smriti Vakyani. Vakyani is what? It is plural, neuter. Vakyani Jivan Mukti Sadbhave Pramanani. And and very long, elaborate, exhaustive discussion is there on this Shruti Smriti Vakyas in the first chapter. In fact, a massive bulk of the book is exhausted only on this portion. Then Katham va tat siddhi. How will Jivan Mukti? Yes, there is Jivan Mukti. And how is this Jivan Mukti accomplished? Katham va tat siddhi. That means Jivan Mukte siddhi. Katham va tat siddhi. So now, tat sadhanam kim? What is the sadhanam? What is the means through which Jivan Mukti will be can be accomplished? This is the question. So in answer to this question, it is said, Tatvajnana manonasha vasanakshaya tasadhanam. So first of all, Tatvajnanam, the knowledge. Knowledge, Tatvajnana means knowledge of the self. Knowledge of the self as not I am good, I am bad, I am holy, I am profane. That is not what is knowledge of the self. It is in fact confusion, misunderstanding about the self. So the self, to know the self as Brahman, as Purnam, is Tattvajnanam. So Tattvajnanam, A. B. Manonasha, dissolution of mind, and C. Vasana Kshaya, the eradication of mental impressions. These three together is the sadhanam for Jivan Mukti. Iti etasya prashnatrayasya uttaram nirupitam. Now, even all these three means were already discussed in the earlier chapters. And so now what is the final question? Siddhava kim prayojanam asya chaturtha prashnasya uttaram idanim adhiyate. Now the fourth question is, when the Jivan Mukti is accomplished, what is it that will be attained through this accomplishment? What will be attained through the accomplishment of Jivan Mukti? This is the fourth question. And tasya uttaram, chaturtha prashnasya uttaram, idanim abhidhiyate. Now this answer will be exhaustively discussed over here in this present chapter. Before we go to the Pancha Prayojanas of Jivan Mukti, once again, we just need to brush up. This is all brushing up, okay? We need to brush up on the definitions of all the three. Which three? Of what is called as Tattvajnanam, what is called as Vasanakshaya, and what is called as Manonasha. And what are all these three together? They are the means to Jivan Mukti. Their definitions we need to brush up a little bit so that they remain, they once again get, even it will be an iteration, but it is repetition and iteration is necessary. We will do that tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and then continue discussing the chapter furthermore. All right. So here we end today's session. Om yasya nishvasitam vedaha yo vedebhyo khilam jagat nirmame tamaham vande Vidyatirtha Maheshwaram. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanta Shanta Shanti Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashikritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Thank you all.